All right, everybody. I wanted to welcome you to the show tonight. You are unmuted. I have not made that mess up in a long time, Sandy. Boy, oh boy, I'm trained well. It's such a great day that we're all here together because, again, it's that communication, it's that voice, it's the conversation, it's what it takes to get it out there, which makes a difference every day as we do this together. And it's funny because here, I'm going to just age myself for a minute, but we were watching the countdown, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the show goes live. And for those of you who are old enough to remember the Thunderbirds are go. And of course, Amazon did do a remake. Boy, oh boy, that brought that right back. So we'll talk about that one day. We're going to talk about old series from the 60s, and I might be the only one who talks about it, but this will be a lot of fun. So with that being said, again, I got my wonderful co-hosts on tonight, Mr. Jeff Frost and Sandy Grigsby. Thank you both for being on tonight.
No, thank you. Sandy, it's glad to have you back here on these calls. I know you've been traveling around the world, and it's always good to have you on these calls with us.
Yeah, well, I was racing Ferraris and Porsches through Europe, and now I'm back in Bangkok. Ooh,
Beautiful.
that was
It
an
is so
adventure, I have to
rough.
say.
Yeah, yeah, I like the story. We got that story last time, so we'll have to talk more of that one time. And we'll bring Martin back too one time. We'll just talk about all the places we've traveled and lived and worked and played and how life has been and how it could have been or not been if we had not made the decisions we made.
Yeah, and where
So,
it's
but it
going, where it's going,
yeah,
guys.
where it's going,
Keep
I
with me.
know.
We're going to South
So
Africa.
look at you. Look at you. Look at you. Look at we were actually about to go to South Africa in 2020. We were supposed to go in July, and then we were going to Israel, and we were going others, and yeah, the little
Yeah,
COVID came up.
that's
Right
that.
when
Oh,
I was in
welcome.
Miami, I was in Miami with Bill, and we were doing a big event on the 22nd, and he's like, "We all better go home," and so we all left on the last plane out, as we say. When all the pilots were on your plane, you knew the plane's going to go. There's some good signals, right? When they literally have like 11 pilots on your plane, we're going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
With that being said, I'm going to now turn this over to Mr. Jeff Frost to introduce our amazing guest for tonight.
Sure, can't believe it's actually been 6 years since that event. Anyway, today's guest is someone who has had a profound impact on my life, personally, especially over the last couple of months. I got the privilege to meet Martin in person, actually on a very exotic location, Punta Cana and Cancun, with our travel club that we were a part of at the time. But Martin stepped into this space now as a transformational coach, and he's had an incredible ability to ask the right questions. The questions of, the ones that most of us try to avoid in our lives. He doesn't just tell you what to think. He creates a beautiful space and an environment for you to discover what's already inside you, and has personally helped me move from performance to alignment, from striving to stewardship, and from chasing success to asking, essentially, what's the big man upstairs inviting me into and helping me to become. And I've seen him do that for some beautiful people around the world. And Martin, that's an absolute privilege to bring you on as a guest here today for Unmuted.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity just to connect with all of you and to share, and I look forward to wherever the conversation goes.
Cool. Well, let's dive straight in, shall we? So, Martin, I just always love to have this conversation, especially with entrepreneurs who have been there, done that. Have got a bit of a track record and a bit of a history of going through the roller coaster ride of it all. Yeah, and you've coached entrepreneurs, leaders, and high performers for years now in this space. So, what is the biggest misconception people have about personal transformation?
I don't know. I don't know if I could articulate just one as the biggest, but what I would say is I think one of the most common is that transformation is one and done, right? It's that, oh, if I like as if there's a like sort of the magic pill theory. There's just this
Mm,
one thing that I can overcome, this one thing that I face, this one thing that I do, then I'll finally break through and everything is going to be great. And the reality is that I just don't think transformation it's not one and done, I believe. But I think transformation, it doesn't show up in the big moments. It shows up in the micro and the small moments. That's actually where transformation takes place. And I feel like certainly a lot of the people that I work with, and I've worked with literally thousands of people over the last 15 years, and the common thread seems to be, as I said, it's one and done, and that they can take their foot off the gas. They can stop working on themselves, once they had a significant breakthrough. That, and by the way, I had that, that notion as well many, many years ago. I'm adopted. I met my birth mother. Took me 10 years of active searching to actually meet her. And in my mind at the time, I was 33 years old. In my mind, I thought, once I met her, I literally did the most terrifying thing I'd ever done in my life, Jeff, which was knock on her front door. And when she said, "Who is it?" I said, "It's Martin." And she knew exactly who I was. And she opened the door and we met. I thought, genuinely believed, that because I had just done the most terrifying thing in my life at that point, I thought, I'm fixed, I'm free. And the reality is that life is always in session, and that there was just another moment to, another level to achieve, another, there's always something more. So in any event, that's what I think it is, really.
Mm, it's beautiful.
Well, I think, the greatest thing about this, and Martin, so I've been on the sort of the other side, and I knew the companies you were involved with because I was with T. Harv Eker at Peak Potentials for a long time. Yeah. So, and there is always something to look at. There is always a growth pattern. There is always sometimes we limit ourselves because of who we were brought up by, or, my parents came from much more money is sort of an evil. Not that it's used for an evil, but it's more about, um, it was more a political statement. Um, and so, part of hearing that and just not having the education of the person who said, be the entrepreneur, it was, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, and that's the way it is. And having to literally my whole life, I'm continuing to break through it. But I think it's that mindset that it's like once the entrepreneur bites in us, once that little piece flips, whatever business it is, it's a massive change, and then it's scary, and then it goes up and down, and it's that education piece. How do you keep yourself going every single day?
Wow, good question. Some days are better than others, right? Some days, it feels like I'm in flow, and other days it feels like I'm in resistance. And I would say that overall, I'm more in flow than in resistance. But how do I keep doing it? I do my best to just live as consciously as I can, and to, for me, this might sound a little strange, but it's really to remember who I am. And I don't mean it in any type of an ego sense of like, remember who I am. It's just to remember who I am and almost whose I am. And I don't necessarily mean that in a full religious sense, or but just in the spiritual sense of, there is so much, I am part of the whole,
Mm,
and I am a piece in the overall network of life and of this world. And so what I do every day, even in the winter, is and I live in Minnesota, so it gets really cold and really snowy here, but I'll always go downstairs after I wake up, put on meditation, turn on the fireplace, and I just sit and meditate for a bit. And then I'll walk outside and I'll put my feet in the grass, or if there's snow in the ground, I got boots on and I'm crunching through the snow in my boots, and at least getting just about 30 seconds minimum of the earth. And
Mhm.
for me, it just grounds me. And I remind myself that, again, I am part of something so much greater than me, than than
powerful.
this. And for some reason, I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and it almost almost always grounds me and connects me and just sort of takes me out of my head and puts me really into my body. And, you know, and then I go through the day, and I think a lot of the process for myself and what I see for other people. And I just had this discussion with a client today. It's remember who you are. Remember who you are. And you don't need to abandon yourself. You don't need to leave yourself. It's just stay connected to who you truly are, not the illusion, not the lie, not the role, not the reflex, who you really are. And life is much, much more enjoyable, and it's much easier to get into the flow of life, into the flow of abundant prosperity and all the goodness in the world, when we're connected to self. So.
I think that is so valid and so important because, especially in the personal development world, there are so many people working so hard to fix what they think is wrong that they forget who they actually are or were. Because when I work with people, I try to remind them of who they were as children, because that's who we are before life has tainted us, before we've been influenced, before we've been traumatized or had anything that has shifted our personality. And when they remember that, it's very eye-opening because it is easy to get swept up in the fixing process.
It,
Do
it,
you
Uh,
see a lot of that with the people you work with?
all the time. As a matter of fact, I had a different client today tell me that, I'm just broken. I'm just broken. And I'm like, you're not broken. You're buried. So nobody's broken. We're just buried, I believe, is again, you're not broken, you're buried. And what you're buried under is as you put it, something happened in childhood typically where, it kind of kicked us into a survival mode. We learned to perform. We learned to play a role. We learned reflexes to stay safe. We created internal agreements with, how to negotiate with the world, or with the environment that we were in order to stay safe, in order to, to sometimes truly just to survive. And I believe that the real process of transformation, as we've been talking about, it's to remember who we really are and that we're not broken. So there's nothing that needs to be fixed. It's something just needs to be removed. The illusion, the false self just needs to be removed. So who we truly are can be revealed. And then it's really a process of integrating the, the again, the remembrance of who we are. It's integrating the truth, because for so many of us and so many people, and I see it in entrepreneurs all the time, is that they think they have to be someone other than who they actually are to succeed. And a lot of the times their survival self, the role they created to survive, actually helped them thrive at some point. It could be the actual, part of the reason why they became successful. But at some point, a lot of people get stuck while they're winning. And and they go from this place of, wow, things are amazing, to what once kept me safe now imprisons me. And they can't get to the next level because, with the thinking and with the version of themselves that got them to where they are, because again, it's based in survival. And I experienced that for myself, and I just, and I see it in a lot of other people. So I really relate to what you just said.
Well, one of the things I know that we've had in our conversations, and something that's just stuck with me, and I've been really marinating in it, if you will. And I think that's perfect just to really sort of, this conversation that we're having here as a group is you mentioned something the other day about a lot of our trauma, whatever it is, gets witnessed into us. But that next level of, yeah, we need to have that sort of witnessed out of us, but also witnessing that's the best probably label if I could give you is you're just a beautiful witness, but witnessing the great stuff in as well as witnessing the stuff out. And I love the term you said, buried. That's that Michelangelo, that's that conversation, with chipping away at the beautiful, carving the stone in that space. And I apologize for the kids in the background. I'll have to make sure that we edit that out. But as Michael says, no, it's raw and beautiful. The kids are at the background. But no, coming back to this whole witnessing conversation, I'd love you to just unpack that.
Sure. Well, I think you said it very well. Excuse me, is that, you know, traumatic events that wind up causing trauma, right? The trauma really isn't necessarily the event itself. It's
Hmm.
what we believed, the idea that we created about ourselves or the world, or us within the world, because of the event. That's the trauma, in my opinion, right? It's not that I got hit, as a kid. It's what I believed about myself or the world that, as a result of that hit, right? There's an example. I feel like that's the trauma. And again, that was, as we've just been saying, as you said, that was, excuse me, witnessed into us by someone else. It happens with society, it happens in our environment, and we can try to eliminate or remove these limiting beliefs, the destructive patterns, the roles and the reflexes and all of those by ourselves. But the reality is that can it be done? Yes. I feel like that's an extremely difficult way to do it. What I have just found is that typically when we're in the midst of other people tend to see us for who we really are, and where we're not in a where we just sometimes can't see ourselves that way. I say it this way: it's like it's hard to read the label from inside the bottle, right? It's hard to see the role from within the role while you're playing it. And so the perspective of other people acting as witnesses to who we really are is a very, very powerful concept. And, I, whether it's one person, whether we're working with one on one, or whether it's more in a group setting or a cohort, it's just very powerful. And, someone said to me once that, they learned to survive all by themselves. They learned to recover all by themselves. And I just was like, that's just not possible. I just don't think it is. I think, there's it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to wake up. It takes a village to become all of who we're meant to be. And the only way that we actually can truly become who we are is through the interaction of other people. Carl Jung said something to the effect of, it was on the paradox of individuation. He said, "I alone must become myself. I cannot become myself alone," right? Is that you have to initiate like being who you are. Um, you know, you have to initiate it on your own, but you can only achieve it through the interaction of other people. Again, witnesses. So I don't know if that really answers it all, but that's the idea.
Well, almost it is because so much of what we do, we realize when you hear the comment of I'm alone or I'm feeling alone. There's that disconnectedness because if you even look at when it was Google and so many of the tech companies, right, sent everybody home. And then all of a sudden, productivity went way down. The think tank went way down. And they're like, wait a sec. I mean, like within a very short period of time, everything started going the wrong way. And they went, well, you're all coming back now.
Environment.
Because but it is that interconnectedness of us being together. I mean, it was part of what was so hard with COVID, was really that disconnectedness even, and we all got so zoomed out, right? Zoom, we love you and we know you're there, but um it's having people around that creates that interconnectedness. And I think in business also, as entrepreneurs and people who step forward, and in any business, I mean, this relates to any business, this relates to family, this relates to everything. But even for introverts, we know we need other people. We know I don't want somebody 24/7. That's a whole different story. But I know to spend a certain amount of time, even just going to the gym, if I'm just going to do the treadmill and there's 200 other people around me, there's something around that interconnected energy that when you come out, even if you really didn't work out or do much, you still feel so different. And that's an important piece.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. What do they say? Strength in numbers, right? It just the reality is that you could be a monk, and a monk could go off and sit in a mountaintop and meditate and become enlightened, and for years. But real enlightenment is how you actually interact when the monk comes down and gets into the world and steps into traffic, and and experiences what really occurs in life. Let's see how enlightened you are then. Life is meant to be lived, in a community in some capacity. And, I think that's also with a lot of entrepreneurs. I think, they think, oh, I've got to do it all by myself. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. It's like, yeah, I think in terms of the initial drive and the perseverance, and yeah, that's up to the individual, but there's no way anyone succeeds by themselves. It's and we can talk about it if you want. I just don't see, I've never seen it happen that way. And it takes other people, and it takes a tribe, a community. And I feel like, especially for entrepreneurs, the more they're willing to play to their strengths and bring on sort of, hire their weaknesses, the better, so in any event, it's really interesting how people think they've just got to do it all their own, like man up, right? Woman up, like, and it's like,
Cowboy up.
yeah, cowboy up. It's like, yeah, okay, but really, well, surround yourself with the thinking that outthinks you. Surround yourself with the performers that are actually outperforming you, and watch yourself rise. Right. So,
Yeah,
So
sure.
true.
That's right. So we only have just a couple minutes left. Um, Martin, is there anything you would like to leave this audience with? And I love you talked about your morning routine because I think those are really important, how we do that. Um, but is there anything you could leave with this audience so audience, the morning routine is one thing. You heard that. That's critically important. It sets your day off. But something that you do or could let them know that they could do in the next 24 hours that could change the way they think, could change their relationship, could even just give them one thing, another reason just to get up in the morning. Is there something you could leave them with?
it's a good question. You know, a- Again, I feel like there's not just sort of one thing, but if I had to just choose one thing, look, um, I feel like a lot of life, a lot of success, a lot of just being able to show up each day is excuse me. It's a decision. It really is. It's a decision. And I'm not someone that believes that I've got to I've got to think my way out of it. But thought is definitely a part of it. But ultimately, it's action. It's the doing of the thing that
Mm,
changes. But here's the real deal. What I've actually learned, it's not the doing first, it's the being. It's frequency precedes form. Okay. I definitely can tell someone, and we could coach people and guide people to take actions and do, but that becomes performance. And I think, Jeff, you talked about performance in the beginning. And performance is exactly that. It's external, right? And it's just, if we can just do the thing that helps you remember who you are, and be who you
yeah,
really are, then the doing, it occurs, it happens, right? You got to be first, then do. And that took me a long time to a long time to remember. And that's why I go out and I do the morning routine. And it's not I'm not and I should say it this way. I'm not doing the morning routine, I'm being the morning routine. I'm just releasing that which just is unnecessary. I'm just releasing everything that I just don't need for the day, for the moment. And to anchor in that typically sets me in the right place. And one other thing I'll just say is if you can just remember, I believe life is about it's about helping other people, right? And if you're it's contribution. And if you're hiding, if you're withholding, and performance is actually a part of that, right? Then perhaps you're not really contributing in a manner that serves other people in their highest to their
Wow.
highest good. And it's really I believe it's really important for everyone to just be yourself, man. Like, I'm not trying to sound like, "Woo, just be yourself, dude." But honestly, like, I would rather have the real version of someone than the performance version
Yeah.
because that allows me, it inspires me, it activates me to do the same. And that has a ripple effect. And if everyone is just like being true, being who they really are, and showing up and serving and, giving of their natural gifts that only they have, like what an amazing world we would actually have, which we
Yeah,
have
you're
an amazing world, but it would be potentially a lot better. Yeah,
you're
sorry.
starting to see the rise of that in social media. If you look at these accounts, people that 10 years ago never would have had a following are blowing up so fast. And I'm talking about in weeks, not years. And people who have been performing for years, their accounts have stayed stagnant. I mean, you can see it. People are gravitating to exactly that. And I think that's
Hungry
beautiful.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I yeah, I agree, and it's and I think AI has a lot to do with that, is that we can smell what is disingenuous, we can just sense it, and I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it also, is that there was so much disconnection, and now people are looking to connect with what's actually true, and it takes guts, it takes courage, um, but I'm so glad you brought that up about social media because I think it's where we can see it most easily, most readily, but
Mirrored.
also
Yeah.
where we can contribute it as well. So yeah,
That's right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Martin, for tonight. Jeff and Sandy, it's been another great show. Martin, we definitely have to have you back on again. We got a lot more we could talk about and we can unpack. So, Sandy and Jeff, before we go, any last comments?
I just love the fact that you really addressed the whole conversation versus, well, essentially we set the tone right at the very beginning, right? Performance versus alignment. And the thing that I know, when I'm operating out of flow, out of my highest genius zone, it's not forced. It just comes out. And you can feel it, you can sense it in your inner core of your being when it's like, all of your senses start to vibrate at a higher level, if you will. And that's what brings, just brings me to life, and seeing others do that. And Martin, thank you for everything that you're doing in my life to be able to help expand that capacity. And I know we talk about a lot about capacity, but to facilitate that conversation, to be able to hold more, to be more, to show up more. So I thank you, Martin. Appreciate you.
Yeah. And
thank
I,
you.
I just love the idea of, going out in the morning, putting your feet on the ground and just remembering who you are. I think everyone needs to do that. It's shifting and it helps you, again, reset your day into what you're supposed to be doing as opposed to being swept up in feelings and emotions and trauma and whatever you saw on your phone that was bad in the morning. So I love that. Thank you for the reminder.
Absolutely.
I
Well,
love it.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening again. This is Unmuted. It's been another great episode. Thank you, Martin, for really spending the time with us because, as we know, all listeners, your time is just as important as our time, whether you're driving your car, hopefully hands on the wheel, not looking at your phone. But that's just a statement for another day. Because you go to LA, it's all Waymos now, anyways. So they even got them parked in the old CBS lot. So, but just how it's a new world. Have a great day, everybody. Have just a wonderful time wherever you are. Listen in, learn every day. You'll read more about Martin in all the show notes. We'll have him well covered there. Make sure that you continue to share the show with everybody that you know. Share the show with everybody that you know. Look at that. I rhymed something. I should write a song. Um,
No,
and
don't do that.
everybody, no, don't, right? Don't sing too. And just have a beautiful day out there, everybody. From myself, from Jeff and Sandy at Unmuted, and Martin for today as part of our family. Everybody have a great morning, afternoon, or evening. Bye, everybody.